Good morning and welcome to the power of self-service portals in the supply chain and logistics industries. Our guest today is Nick Burt, VP of Product Strategy at Endava, who's responsible for the delivery and implementation of new products and applications. Nick, you wrote a recent article about CX, or customer experience, in the supply chain. And one of the design elements that you recommended for a better customer experience is a self-service portal. So we have a few more questions around that topic. Do you mind if we dig in?
Sure, let's go for it.
Great. So Nick, first of all, what is a self-service portal?
Well, that's a great place to start, isn't it? So
Yes.
a self-service portal is really any digital destination, by which we mean websites and apps that a business provides so that a customer can find answers to questions or maybe do things like find the status of their order. So as consumers, self-service portals have become so commonplace in our everyday lives as to become almost invisible to us. So, for instance, when was the last time you made a conscious decision to register or log into a portal? You probably don't think like that. But you probably don't think twice about registering with a brand that you frequently transact with, usually with some expectation that in return you'll receive some amount of utility or convenience in return.
Right. I think self-service portals, although we may not realize that we're interacting with them every day, they have become commonplace, like you said. So in the supply chain ecosystem, what exactly does a self-service portal do?
Well, the scope of a self-service portal can vary considerably from business to business, but the key features, so the features I think most customers would expect as a minimum, would be things like order tracking, shipment scheduling, so that's requesting pickup or delivery of the goods, arranging returns and managing claims maybe. So if, for example, goods have unfortunately become damaged or lost in transit. I think customers would also likely expect to be able to make payments, access any related documentation like invoices, customers documentation or bills of lading. Lastly, you frequently see some kind of support and help center providing access to a knowledge base, maybe things like frequently asked questions. And of course, if all the other means fail, some way of contacting the business, and doing so ideally in a way that automatically includes everything about you and your context so that you're not having to repeat yourself. So information on which order it was you were looking at when you made the query, as well, of course, as a way of tracking and monitoring the progress of that inquiry. So no business wants to have these customers' inquiries just disappear into a black hole. I think
Right.
there's probably
It's
yes.
frustrating when that happens.
Yeah, and it does. We see this all the time, don't we, with the businesses that I think probably any of us deal with on day to day. I think there's probably one other thing to think about. It's a self-service portal. It's designed for the customers, but it does have a business use over and above providing that convenience to customers as well. So from a business perspective, you'd expect the self-service portal to provide an internally facing interface so that you can do things like manage customer access and obviously respond to those tickets so they're not disappearing into a black hole, but also do things like generate reports so you can have insights around things like the performance of your portal.
Same thing. So, Nick, what should you be especially mindful of when designing a new self-service portal?
I would say to start by assembling the right team. So you need people who are familiar with the business. And obviously I'm biased here, but I think it really helps to have people coming in from the outside with a fresh pair of eyes. Ideally, people who've built customer portals before and understand how to both design and implement great user experiences. I think once you have your team, you need to begin understanding your customer needs. In my experience, businesses can actually find this prospect quite daunting, especially when they have thousands of customers, which is it's not unusual, of course. So I find the best way to start is to talk to the people who deal with your customers every day. Start with the call center staff or office staff that have to deal with customer queries. But it's important to be very clear when you do this, be tactful, make sure that they know what it is you're trying to achieve and how this is going to make their jobs easier so they really understand why you're asking these questions. If you just walk in there and start asking very probing questions like, where are you spending most of your time, then people might get a bit suspicious and get the wrong idea about why you're undertaking this initiative.
Right.
So
You certainly don't want it to be too invasive.
Well, exactly. And like I say, it's about being transparent, being clear about what you're trying to do, because there are benefits to the people who are dealing with customers as well. The main benefit that I put forward, by the way, is that it allows people within the contact center, within the office, whoever's dealing with those queries, to really spend their time on where they can add value. So not those sort of, where's my order, and they have to go looking up for the order, and there's no real value adding with that human interaction. So it really allows them to spend more time, like I say, adding value where value can be added through human interaction.
Right, that's a great point.
So I think once you've or really what you're trying to learn is the type of customer problems that the business is solving today. So how easy or difficult it is to solve those issues, what the processes are, etc. I then look at to group those issues into the types of queries, like, is it locating a shipment that could be provided without manual intervention, providing that data is available, of course. And those, as I've said, that are going to have, you're actually going to get some real value from continuing to have some human interaction in there. They'll often have metrics, by the way. If you do have a contact center, they'll quite often have these metrics. They'll generally tag the types of calls that are coming in. So sometimes this analytics is actually available, which is really, really useful when you start these initiatives. Finally, I'd use what you learn to formulate a strategy for your customer portal. What you should be aiming to do really is get a version into the hands of customers as early as you can, so you can start getting feedback that will further inform that product strategy.
Yeah, that sounds like great advice, Nick. What advice do you have for companies who are considering building versus buying a self-service portal?
But this is a question I get asked a lot, and it's not just self-service portals, by the way. It's any piece of technology. Where am I going to build it? Am I going to buy it? That's always the big question, isn't it? So I think there's probably a number of factors that you might want to consider. Obviously, start with what it is you want to achieve, and that work that you've done, that research that you've done, is going to help inform that. I think secondly, you want to ask yourself how many of these needs are going to be satisfied with something as simple as a knowledge base and maybe some simple FAQs and a ticketing system, because there's a lot of solutions that you can buy off the shelf. We use the phrase COTS, so off the shelf software, that are going to provide that kind of facility. So if the answer is most of them, then that's probably a good place to start. If, on the other hand, a lot of the questions that your customers are coming to you with are about things like the status of their order, information that's only accessible through the legacy systems that you have today, then that is going to point you more towards either a lot of integration work if you buy something off the shelf, which is kind of that halfway house between build and buy, or building something bespoke. I think the last thing to consider is how much control you want over it. So how much of this thing that you're going to build is going to become part of the value that your company and the differentiator that your company can provide to your customers. So I refer to that as thinking about your IP, so your intellectual property. So if this portal that you build is going to become a really important value driver, you might want to ask yourself, do you want to put that into the control of somebody else, into the control of a third party? I've even had circumstances where a piece of technology which has been absolutely pivotal to a business has actually been purchased by a competitor or has been sunsetted by the vendor who produces it, leaving you in a very difficult situation where you either have to find an alternative solution from a new vendor and obviously hope that they're not going to do the same thing, or then start building something that kind of replaces the system that you're losing. So lots of things to consider there.
Yeah, well, there's always the age-old conundrum of build it versus buy it. So that's great advice, Nick. Great. Thank you. That's it for today, and thank you to our viewers. And look for upcoming executive spotlights on our LinkedIn page. Thank you.
Thank you.